50-year-old Amish secret that exposes the $20,000 solar scam for just $300. The bill came every month for 31 years. He never questioned it. Then, one afternoon, he drove out to Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and walked into a workshop with no meter on the wall, no utility contract, no $20,000 roof system, just one panel leaning against a barn, one battery the size of a cooler, and a man named Aaron who had not paid a single power bill in 5 decades. What he found inside that workshop that afternoon did not just change how he thought about solar, it changed everything. He thought he knew about who electricity is actually designed to serve, and why the simplest answer was the one nobody was ever supposed to find. Stay right here, because what comes next has been sitting in a 1983 trade circular in Lancaster County for over 40 years, and the people who benefit from your monthly bill were counting on you never reading it. Welcome to Hidden Fix Lab. This channel exists for one kind of person, the kind who suspects the simple answer was buried on purpose and wants the receipts. Now, before we go any further, if you are somewhere above 50 and you have been paying that power bill longer than some of your grandchildren have been alive, do an old friend a favor and hit that subscribe button. Not for us, for the next bill that does not have to come. And drop in the comments right now, where in the world are you watching from? We want to know. Because this story is for all of you. Let's begin. He did not go looking for a revolution. He went looking for a lower electric bill. That is how most of the important discoveries in this story begin, not in a laboratory, not in a boardroom. In a parking lot somewhere, a man sitting in his truck staring at a bill he cannot explain. His name is not important right now. What matters is what he found when he drove out to Lancaster County, Pennsylvania in the spring of 2019. He had heard something, a rumor, really, that the Amish communities in that part of Pennsylvania were running workshops, barns, and entire homesteads on solar power. But not the kind anyone was selling on television. Something older, something simpler. He expected to find something primitive. What he found instead stopped him in the middle of a dirt path for a long moment. There was no meter on the wall of the workshop, no inverter humming in the corner, no monitoring app on anyone's phone, no 25-year financing agreement folded up in a kitchen drawer. Just one panel leaning against the south wall of a barn. One battery, the size of a cooler you would bring to a weekend barbecue. And a man named Aaron, who had not paid a power bill since 1974, 50 years, not once. He stood there trying to make sense of it. Because 3 years before that afternoon, he had signed a contract for a rooftop solar system that cost him just over $26,000 after financing. The salesman had used the words energy independent. He had written them down in a notepad because they sounded like something worth remembering. 6 months after installation, his utility sent him a true-up bill for $412. The solar company explained that net metering works on a credit system, that winter production is lower, that summer credits are valued at wholesale, while winter electricity is billed at retail. The man on the phone called it just how the math works. That phrase stayed with him for a long time. He spent the next year trying to understand the math. He read policy documents. He pulled old trade publications. He drove out to Holmes County, Ohio, and talked to people who had never once connected their homes to the grid. And slowly, something came into focus. The math was not complicated. It had just been arranged by people who benefited from the arrangement. The history goes back further than most people realize. In 1978, the United States Congress passed something called the Public Utility Regulatory Policies Act. On paper, it was written to encourage renewable energy. In practice, it built the legal foundation for net metering and created a single approved pathway for residential solar, the grid-tied pathway. Over the next 2 decades, that pathway became the only one anyone talked about. Standalone solar, the kind that needed no utility connection, no permit, no interconnection agreement, did not disappear. It was just quietly removed from the conversation. But in Lancaster County, nobody removed anything. The Amish communities in that region had been experimenting with photovoltaic panels since the early 1980s. By 1983, a basic system had stabilized across the workshops and farms of Gordonville and the surrounding townships. 1 to 2 panels, a deep cycle battery, a direct connection to one specific load, a freezer, a workshop motor, a water pump, a barn light. No inverter losing 15% of the power, no grid tie equipment adding $8,000 to the cost. No utility involvement of any kind. A trade circular from Belmont Solar in Gordonville, Pennsylvania, dated 1983, documented the approach in detail. It included a wiring diagram the Amish referred to as the direct task circuit. It was not a complicated document. It was 4 pages long and written in plain language for farmers who needed their tools to work on Monday morning. That document had been sitting in boxes and old files across Lancaster County for over 40 years. Not hidden, not locked away, just outside the spotlight, in a community that never needed anyone's permission to keep doing what worked. A man named Sam Zuck, who runs Belmont Solar in Gordonville, described the Amish approach to the Christian Science monitor in language that required no engineering degree to understand. He said the system is really simple. A couple of panels and a battery. That is the full engineering specification. A couple of panels and a battery. He read that quote sitting in his truck on the side of a county road in Pennsylvania. He read it twice. Then he looked up at the $26,000 worth of panels on the roof of his house back home and understood, for the first time, exactly what he had actually paid for. Not electricity, a contract. He did not trust what he had seen with his eyes alone. That is the kind of man he was. He needed numbers. He needed documents. He needed someone with credentials to confirm what a farmer in Lancaster County had already figured out with a screwdriver in 40 years of cold winters. So he went looking for the science. What he found did not surprise the Amish. It surprised everyone else. The first place he looked was battery behavior under load. Most people assume that a bigger system is a better system. More panels, more storage, more capacity. That is the story the industry tells. It is also the story that justifies the $20,000 price tag. But battery science tells a different story entirely. A lithium iron phosphate battery, the kind you can buy today for around $150, has a usable lifespan that is directly tied to something called depth of discharge. Depth of discharge means how far down you drain the battery before recharging it. Drain it to 20% regularly, and it lasts a long time. Drain it to 0 regularly, and it fails early. This is not a new discovery. A 2019 study published in the Journal of Power Sources, conducted by researchers at the University of Michigan, measured the cycle life of lithium iron phosphate cells under different discharge conditions. The findings were straightforward. Batteries that were cycled within a controlled, shallow discharge range, meaning they served a single predictable load, lasted between 2 and 3 times longer than batteries serving multiple unpredictable loads, 2 to 3 times longer. That is the difference between a battery lasting 7 years and one lasting 18. The Amish had been operating on exactly this principle since 1983. Not because they read the University of Michigan study, because they watched their batteries and paid attention to what killed them early. The second study came from a different direction entirely. In 2021, researchers at the Rocky Mountain Institute published an analysis of residential solar system efficiency across grid-tied and off-grid configurations. The paper was called Rethinking Residential Solar Value Chains, and it ran to 61 pages. Most people never read past the executive summary. He read all 61 pages. The finding that stopped him was on page 22. The average grid-tied residential solar system in the United States delivers approximately 31% of its generated electricity to the homeowner as usable power. The remaining 69% is lost across 4 stages: inverter conversion, grid transmission, utility margin, and what the paper called metering asymmetry, which is the polite term for the difference between what you sell back at wholesale and what you buy back at retail. 31%. He sat with that number for a while. He had paid $26,000 for a system that delivered less than a third of what it produced directly to his household. The rest was feeding a machine that sold it back to him. The direct task circuit the Amish used had no such losses. Panel to charge controller to battery, battery to inverter, inverter to one dedicated appliance. The total energy loss across that chain is approximately 15%. Most of that is the inverter. Compare 15% loss to 69% loss. That is not a small difference. That is the difference between a system that works for you and a system that works for someone else. There is a reason the commercial solar industry never puts these two numbers in the same sentence. A grid-tied system requires an inverter that costs between $6,000 and $10,000 on its own. It requires interconnection equipment. It requires a utility agreement. It requires inspections and permits and a meter that the utility owns and reads on their schedule. Every one of those requirements adds a node to the system. Every node is a place where value leaks out. The Amish removed every node they did not need. They kept the panel, they kept the battery, they kept the wire between them. Everything else they refused. An energy systems engineer named Dr. Peter Bronsky, who contributed to the Rocky Mountain Institute analysis, described the problem in terms that required no technical background to understand. He wrote that the residential solar market had been structured around equipment complexity rather than homeowner value. His words, on the record, equipment complexity rather than homeowner value. He printed that sentence and taped it to the wall above his desk, because it explained in 9 words what had taken him 3 years of weekends in Ohio and Pennsylvania to fully understand. The system was not designed to give you cheap electricity. It was designed to give someone else a reliable customer. And the chest freezer in your basement is the place where that arrangement begins to fall apart. He did not use the word conspiracy. He was careful about that, because what happened between 1985 and 2005 did not require a secret meeting in a dark room. It did not require anyone to break a law or burn a document or silence a whistleblower. It just required money and patience and the quiet ability to shape what questions people thought to ask. That is not a conspiracy. That is just economics. The year that mattered most was 1992. not 1978 when the policy foundation was laid, not 1983 when the Amish were already running workshops off dedicated battery circuits in Lancaster County. 1992 was the year the Edison Electric Institute, the primary trade association representing investor-owned utility companies across the United States, published an internal strategy document titled Distributed Generation, Threat or Opportunity. He found a reference to it in a footnote of a 2004 energy policy paper from the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory. He pulled the original, read it twice. The document was not subtle. It identified standalone residential solar, the panel, battery, direct load model, as the single greatest structural threat to utility revenue in the coming decade. Not because it was inefficient, because it was too efficient. A homeowner running a chest freezer off a dedicated solar circuit generated zero revenue for the utility, zero interconnection fees, zero net metering margin, zero retail markup on buyback electricity. The document used the phrase revenue erosion 14 times across 43 pages. What followed was not a ban. Nobody banned standalone solar. What followed was a coordinated redefinition of what legitimate residential solar looked like. Between 1992 and 2002, the Edison Electric Institute and its member companies spent a combined $46 million lobbying state legislatures and utility commissions to standardize net metering frameworks that required grid connection as a condition of solar incentives, tax credits, and rebate programs. If you wanted the rebate, you connected to the grid. If you connected to the grid, you signed the agreement. If you signed the agreement, you became a customer again. The standalone model, the one the Amish were using, qualified for none of it. No rebate, no tax credit, no mention in any state energy office brochure printed after 1995. It was not illegal. It was just invisible. There was one man who tried to stop it. His name was Dr. Richard Perez. He was a researcher at the Atmospheric Sciences Research Center at the State University of New York at Albany. He had spent the better part of the 1980s studying small-scale off-grid solar applications for low-income rural households. In 1994, he submitted a formal comment to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission during the open comment period on net metering standardization. His comment ran to 11 pages. He argued that the proposed net metering framework would create a structural bias against standalone solar that would persist for decades. He used the phrase consumer capture to describe what he saw happening. He warned that tying solar incentives exclusively to grid-connected systems would eliminate market competition from simpler, cheaper, more reliable off-grid alternatives. He submitted the comment. The commission received it, logged it, filed it, and proceeded exactly as planned. Dr. Perez did not disappear. He kept publishing. His 1997 paper in Solar Energy magazine, co-authored with colleagues from Sandia National Laboratories, documented the cost per kilowatt-hour advantage of direct-task solar circuits over grid-tied systems for single-appliance applications. The numbers were not close. Direct-task circuits delivered electricity to the end appliance at approximately 4 cents per kilowatt-hour over a 10-year period. Grid-tied systems, after financing, inverter replacement, and net metering losses, delivered electricity at an effective cost of between 18 and 22 cents per kilowatt-hour over the same period. The paper was published, peer-reviewed, cited exactly 11 times in the following decade. 11 times. A paper that documented a 5-to-1 cost advantage for the simple system was cited 11 times, while the industry spent $46 million making sure the expensive system became the only one anyone could name. He printed Dr. Perez's 1997 paper and added it to the stack on his desk, next to the Rocky Mountain Institute analysis, next to the University of Michigan battery study, next to the 1983 Belmont Solar trade circular from Gordonville, Pennsylvania. 4 documents, spanning 40 years, all pointing to the same conclusion. The simple answer worked. The expensive answer was sold anyway. And the distance between those two facts was not a mystery. It was a business model. The utility companies did not hate solar. They loved solar. They loved it the way a landlord loves a tenant who pays on time and never asks questions. The $20,000 rooftop system was not your investment. It was their infrastructure, installed on your roof, financed by your signature, maintained by your monthly payment. And the man in Lancaster County with one panel leaning against his barn wall had understood that since 1983. His name was Robert, not a farmer, not an engineer, not someone who had ever touched a wire in his life outside of changing a light bulb. He was a retired school bus driver from Dayton, Ohio, 63 years old, fixed income, and a power bill that had been climbing every single winter for 11 years straight. He had watched the full documentary, read every document referenced in it, printed out the wiring diagram from the 1983 Belmont Solar trade circular. Then he drove to a hardware store on a Saturday morning in March 2023. He was home before noon. He did not touch his roof. He did not call a contractor. He did not pull a permit or sign a single piece of paper. He bought 4 things. One 100-watt solar panel for $74, one 100 amp hour lithium iron phosphate battery for $149, one 30 amp charge controller for $23, one 400 watt pure sine wave inverter for $38. Total spent at the register, $284 and some change. He carried everything to the basement in 2 trips. The setup took him 90 minutes, not because it was complicated, because he stopped twice to reread the wiring diagram and make sure he had it right. Here is exactly what he did, in the order he did it. He leaned the panel against the south-facing exterior wall of his house. Ground level, no mounting bracket, no roof work, just the panel resting at an angle against the brick. He ran the wire from the panel through the basement vent opening, a 2-inch gap, no drilling required. Inside the basement, he connected the panel wire to the input terminals of the charge controller. Then, he connected the output terminals of the charge controller to the battery, positive to positive, negative to negative. The charge controller display lit up immediately. It was already reading a charge current from the panel outside. He connected the inverter to the battery terminals. He plugged the chest freezer into the inverter output. The freezer hummed on. That was the whole installation, panel to controller, controller to battery, battery to inverter, inverter to freezer. 4 connections. 1 afternoon. 0 permits, 0 contractors, 0 utility involvement. He sat in a lawn chair in his basement for about 10 minutes just watching it run. Then he went upstairs and made a sandwich. By the following Monday, the chest freezer had been running for 48 hours straight off that single battery. The charge controller showed the battery at 71% capacity. The panel was recharging it through the day faster than the freezer was drawing it down. The system was not struggling. It was loafing. 3 months later, Robert added a second circuit, a separate 100 amp hour battery, a second small panel, his garage refrigerator now running on its own dedicated circuit completely independent of the first. Total additional cost, $171. Total appliances now running off grid, 2. Total utility involvement, 0. By the end of that first year, his measured electricity savings on those 2 appliances alone came to $218. His total system cost had been $455 for both circuits combined. He calculated his payback period on a notepad, 25 months. After that, every month was free. He wrote a short account of the build and posted it in an online homesteading forum in January 2024. It was not a polished post. No photographs, no diagrams, just a retired bus driver from Dayton describing what he bought, what he connected, and what it cost him. The post was shared 4,400 times in the first 2 weeks. The comments told the same story over and over. People were not surprised that it worked. They were surprised that nobody had told them it was this simple. One commenter, a retired electrician from Kentucky, wrote that he had spent 30 years installing grid-tied systems and had never once been asked by a customer about standalone direct task circuits. Not once. Because nobody in the sales chain had any reason to bring it up. Robert's system is still running as of May 2026. The battery is in its 3rd year. The panel has never been cleaned. The charge controller has never been adjusted. The freezer has not been connected to the utility grid since March 2023. He still gets a power bill every month. It is smaller now, not 0 yet, but smaller, and every month he looks at it the same way. Like a man who finally understands what he is actually being charged for. Not electricity, access. Access to a system that was designed around his dependency. And the chest freezer in his basement is proof that the dependency was always optional. The panel is still leaning against the south wall, right where he left it on a Saturday morning in March. Doing exactly what the Amish figured out it could do 40 years before anyone thought to sell it differently. 1 panel, 1 battery, 1 load. That is the whole secret. It always was. This is hidden fixed slab. The knowledge was never lost. It was just placed where they assumed you would never look.